Well, hi there, and welcome to the Acrylic Portrait Painting Challenge Masterclass, lesson number 6, building up richness and depth in your portrait. Building up richness and depth in your portrait. Well, right now we are getting a little closer to the finish line here. In the last lesson we added some shading, we developed the value structure, and now we're going to be diving into adding more nuance, more depth, and basically working over the entire portrait. We don't want to neglect any areas, and we want to get this close to the finish line. Again, I'm so proud of you for what you've been able to accomplish in this challenge, and you are doing an awesome job. I just want to congratulate you on a job well done, diving into a challenge like this and pushing through, those times where you second guess yourself and you're wondering, man, is this going to work out? Am I going to be able to get the shading and the color and the skin tones to look right? And I just want to applaud you, especially if you've never done a portrait painting before and this is your first time, or you've just basically started doing portraits. I want to commend you for taking on a challenge. It's not easy to paint portraits, and so thank you so much for investing time into yourself, for trusting me to be able to teach you, and I'm looking forward to helping you to finish this portrait well so you can have a portrait you're proud to show others. Right now I'm just going to ask a quick blessing here, and we're going to dive right into the class. Father, I ask a blessing here on this class. Help me to be able to teach it well. I pray, Lord, for all of the students that you would encourage them, you would enable them, Lord, to just be able to paint a portrait they could be proud of, and they push through any challenges, any areas of the painting that are unresolved, and they would develop their skills as they do it. As they push through, Lord, they would become better artists, even better people in a sense, as they develop perseverance and resilience in the face of challenge. And so, Lord, I ask a blessing. Help me to be able to teach this and just make everything clear to the students. And I pray you provide for them everything they need. Draw them close to you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we're going to dive in, but before we do, I just want to encourage you, if you haven't already signed up, sign up for the Portrait Challenge. It's completely free. Even if you're watching this after fall, it might be winter or spring or summer, whatever the season, you can sign up at realisticacrylic.com/fall-acrylic-portrait-painting-challenge. When you sign up, you'll get the welcome kit with everything you need to paint with us, the supplies list, the reference photo, the palette layout guide, the masterclass lessons will all be sent to you, and you'll be able to paint along with us, and it's going to be a fantastic time. Your art skills will go to a higher level as you paint along with us. All right, let's dive in here. What I want to do right now is, I think, darken her hair. That just looks like it needs to get a little bit darker so it can come along alongside the rest of the skin tones. The shading on the face. We don't want this value to be too light, because right now the skin tones are almost the same value. The shaded part of her face, the part in shadow, is just about at the same value as her hair, and the hair needs to be a little darker. I'm just going to put some fresh matte medium on my palette, and I'm going to take this flat edge brush, a size 12. I might have a round brush as well that I'll use too, alternatively, but we'll see how this works. And I'm going to take some raw umber dark, mix it with a little bit of ultramarine blue, and we're making, again, kind of a blackish mixture. All right, I want to show you the mixture on my white card. That's looking pretty opaque at this point. I'm going to actually make it just a little more translucent. We'll introduce a bit more matte medium into it. So again, raw umber dark, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and that will give you a really nice black color, but it's a little richer than just using straight ivory black. You can control the color temperature. And we're going to just paint this on top of everything. We're going to just darken the entire area, I think. but the layers you have from before where we created some texture should come through. Now you want to cycle back and forth between these large areas and small areas. So you know, we're covering the entire shaded area right now, but then you want to come back in and also get those little small pockets. You know, if you remember my metaphor of nations and states, these large areas would be like the geographical shape of a nation, but then inside you have these smaller areas that are like states, and those would be the little shadows on top of the larger shadow. So you don't want to neglect those little areas either. We're going to cycle back and forth between those. And as I do this lesson, you're going to possibly notice in between a couple of the lessons that the painting is going to be coming a little farther along. There's just some extra footage I can't capture in this 8-hour series. You know, each lesson is about an hour long, and a painting takes more than 8 hours for me to complete. So I will be having some bonus videos. Those are available in the All Access membership. If you're an All Access member, you can see that. And I apologize, I can't get everything into this 8-hour series. So again, if you see a little bit of change between where we end up in this at the end of this lesson and then the next lesson, that is going to be contained in the bonus videos. But I'm trying to show you just as much as I can here. And basically what I'll be doing is just cycling back and forth. And you can do that also as you paint this. Just continually strengthen, adding more layers to this shadowed area and then more layers in those little pockets as well. And I'll see if I can get one of them done here and demonstrate that to you within this lesson if this area dries in time. It should. It should dry for us in maybe about 15 minutes or so. So while that's drying, I'm going to just take my brush now, dip it into some matte medium, and I want to add just a little more raw umber dark and get it just a slightly warmer tone. And let's just even add a little bit of alizarin crimson. So I'm taking that same mix, but I'm just warming it up a little bit. I'm not adding ultramarine blue this time. And I'm going to just go a little bit over the edges now. So just use the edge of your brush and we're going to soften up. We're going to soften up the edges, develop a little bit of nuance as we get into the highlight areas. You can really see what I'm doing here. So I'm basically just developing a little bit of shading so we don't have those really ultra harsh edges from the transitional highlights into these shadows. And I'm going to basically, see, I'm just working up into it. I'm using little curvy, puffy kind of motions with my brush. Here, I'm developing a little shading up on this area as well. All right, and that's how we develop a little bit of nuance. So we're going on top of that original line, you know, that we had, whatever the shape was, and we're overlapping that a little bit, but then we're also painting on top of that and into the highlight area. So now instead of having that ultra sharp edge, we're developing a little shading and nuance. The reason I'm using a warmer color is because where you have light shining, usually the colors are going to get a little warmer, especially if it's illuminated by sunlight. And that's why the color I chose for this was that same mix, but without the ultramarine blue, rather just using the raw umber dark and alizarin crimson. And of course diluted with matte medium to make it a little more translucent. I want to show that to you on the white card, just so you can see the difference. So that's what that color would be as compared to the glaze we put down to darken the entire area. You can see it's a little lighter and just a bit warmer in tone. And we're just going to blend this shadow out from her hair into the rest of the face, because it is a bit darker here, and then it goes down. Now you might notice, and you might have this occurring in your painting, it actually is right now on mine, I'm getting a little bit of blotchiness in this area. Don't be too concerned about that. We can definitely smooth that out later on when we get towards the end of the painting. Don't be so concerned about the texture if you have some blotchiness. Just be concerned more about getting the gradual shift from a darker value up here to a lighter value down there. And let's also darken her entire neck area again. We're just using this raw umber dark, alizarin crimson with a touch of ultramarine blue. Again, it's just basically the color we used up here. So it's a little bit little warmer in tone. And you want to spray your palette and really keep that glaze nice and fluid, or it does get a little harder to blend out on here. And I want to get this shadow just up to the edge here of this backlighting. I'm stopping short right there. I'll have to switch colors into something a little bit warmer. So we can take this same glaze and let's add a little bit of burnt sienna to it. A little bit of burnt sienna. And we'll move some of the alizarin crimson into that mix. So we're just cycling between this mix I had that was working on the highlights of her hair and that original glaze that just darkened in her entire hair. And I'm just making use of that and bridging the gap between this darker, cooler tone and then this lighter, warmer tone. I don't want to reinvent the wheel each time. I just try to use what I have available on my palette and work with that. And I'm going to just blend out of the shadow I put down. So I'm going right up to the edge. Make sure you don't overlap it, or it's going to get a dark line where the two meet together. So just kind of blend out of that. And if you're getting any blotchiness, just leave off, let it dry. I just want to get a little bit of shading coming out of that area. It can go actually all the way to the edge here of this carotid artery. Let's see what else we can work on now. The hair actually is already dry, believe it or not, but I think I want to work on the background just a bit, and we'll come back to these other areas again. Let's put in a little bit of richness into the background. I'm going to take some fresh matte medium, and let's take just a bit of raw sienna. A little bit of raw sienna. We always just want to cycle back and forth between foreground and background. Don't leave anything neglected. A little bit of raw sienna and touch of phthalo blue, which is a very powerful color. We'll just wipe it over on the top here, pull it into the mixture. Okay, we're going to get kind of a nice grass green, like almost dead grass. And we're going to just place this right in the background a little bit. I'm just going to place that in, using some diagonal strokes going in various directions. Trying not to just do everything. I'm trying to leave a couple pockets that have a little bit of just the blue. I I think we need a little of that coloring up here as well. Yeah, that's good. And while we're at it, let's use the same color and let's enrich the trees that are a little closer to us. I'm going to add just a bit of ultramarine blue to the bottom of this mix. And I'm going to just add a little bit of shading here on the bottom of these trees. Yeah, I'm going to work into the darker shadows into the lighter areas. Work a little more raw sienna into the mix. I'll show you this on the white card. This is what it looks like. Nice goldenrod color. Maybe not quite goldenrod, has a little more green than that, but I like it. And we'll just bring this coloring right up into the trees. And I'm going to put another layer on this spot below the log or whatever that is. Just enrich that. More saturation. The glazing technique is just so fun how you can go over your previous layers and not disturb them. You have all the detail, all the shading, all the work from previous layers. It's like building on a foundation. All right, now let's go ahead and just darken the woman's face a little bit. I want to basically tone this all in a little bit darker. And I'm going to take raw umber dark and mix it with some matte medium. And let's see, maybe just a touch of alizarin crimson. So I'm mixing it into the matte medium. We're going to make a fairly light glaze. I want to go over the entire area, like I said, and this is what we're looking at on the white card for the color. And I'm just going to go over the whole thing. I might wipe away a couple of areas with the rag, but I'm going to tone the entire area of her face. And we're just going to overlap the hair a little bit. And we're just going to continue brushing down using kind of crisscross strokes. So I'm just basically toning in the entire area a little bit. I'm going to go all the way on top of her neck. I'm going to try to leave off on these highlighted areas of the back and then go all the way up to the edge of her clothing. And as easily as I can do with this flat edge brush, go right up to the edge of the clothing, then smooth it out. Now if you have a really light glaze, you should be able to get a nice even coat. And I think that'll be good. I can come back in with some opaque highlights later. I just want to overall give the entire area a little more of a tone. That's good. And then with that, I'm going to go back to the hair. Remember, we left off in that before. Now it's dry. And I want to darken, I think, the entire area one more time. So let's take this glaze we had from before. I'm going to have to add a little bit more paint to it. It kind of dried up. We've got raw umber dark, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson. We're just going to darken that entire area again. Basically making the same kind of glaze we had from before. And we're just going to paint over this whole mass of hair. We're using this flat edge brush. That should work really nicely. basically all the way to the top. That's good. We're just going to smooth this out here, and that gives us more contrast to work with in the whole area. All right. And now let's darken the right side of the background, give a little more contrast to her shirt. I'm going to take this the 1 inch flat. I'm going to use this glaze I already have with the skin tone. That was where I darkened the entire area of her face, and I'm going to just add on to that, mixing a little bit of ultramarine blue into that entire glaze. I just want to use what I have on the palette. And let's add just a little bit of raw sienna to it, because it looks a little too bluish, so I want to cancel that out with a little bit of raw sienna. And then let's look at this on the white card. This is the color we've got, and I hold it up to my reference photo, and I can see, yep, that's kind of in the neighborhood. That's the best way to test. And we're going to apply that over this whole area. And just a little more raw sienna. I just detect a tiny bit of warmth in there. All right, we're gonna basically just darken this entire area here on the right. We can overlap into the greenish areas, but we don't want to go on top of her clothing. We're going to cut around the edge of that. All right, that's good. It's going to take a few more layers beyond this, but that's going to get us in the right direction. Now let's darken more of her clothing on this left-hand side. I'm going to use the same glaze, but I'm going to pull a little more blue into it. On my palette, I have this a little bit of ultramarine blue to the side, and I'm just going to add that to the mix. Let's add just a touch of alizarin crimson. It needs a little more of that purplish tone. So we're getting kind of a purplish, bluish gray. And we're just going to go over this whole area with the flat edge brush. I'm going to try to avoid this area down here because that should be a bit lighter in tone. And we're going to darken this left side of her chest area, and then pull from the slightly more yellowish mixture right here, and we'll add a glaze just to this side of her chest, but not going on the top. I still want to leave the top part very, very light, have a lot of luminosity there. Use some vertical strokes as well to kind of correspond to the direction of the clothing. I'm going to wipe that away. I don't want that to go that far up. All right, that's good. Now, I might do something a little bit crazy here, something a little fun. And I think I'm going to put the white face paint on her at this point. I'm probably going to have to do it again, but I want to just get that shift in values. I want to see the difference between her skin tones and that white, and convert this from pencil lines into more of what it'll look like when it's finished. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to spray the palette really good here. Every 15 minutes or so, it's a good idea to spray the palette. Keep that paint really nice and fluid. I'm going to use my size 3 round brush. Get it to a really nice fluid state by mixing it with matte medium. And then I'm going to just basically apply that right on top of here. And we're just going to fill in these little circles. Okay, I'm just going to switch to a smaller brush here. This is a script liner brush. Should work a little better for getting the preciseness. Any small brush about this size will do, as long as you can get it to a good point. Let's just go over on top, and now the trick will be to not get a lot of visual texture. I'm just going to dab this. I want the paint to be really fluid. Spray it one more time because I don't want to have raised texture on the surface of this, especially if I have to go over it one more time. And I might have to go over it one more time. So I'm just following my sketch lines. We'll just flow that all the way across. And we'll just use some very short choppy strokes and connect that all the way across. Want to really keep the paint fluid. I'm going to hook down on the right hand side. It should get a little thinner on that right hand side because that's in perspective. We have just this light streak running down her middle of her lip. Want to capture that. And then get this larger dot right on her chin. While I'm doing this with the white paint, I'm going to also begin to get the white of her eyes in. I'm going to mix just a little bit of raw sienna with it. And I'm just going to use this slightly off-white color. Just begin to get in the white of her eyes. Now on the other side, I'm not going to apply it because that part's in shadow. But just on the right hand side, just on that part, we're going to get the shape of the cornea, the white of the eyes. And while I have this white handy, I'm just going to use some pure white again, diluted with a little matte medium just to make it fluid. And I'm just going to add a little bit of white to her shoulder here just to strengthen that area. On both sides, just illuminate that a little bit, strengthen those areas that were lost from some of my background layers going on top of that spot. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so you always want to take a look at your painting from a distance and see how it's working. And I really like how this is coming along. I like the addition of the white markings on her face, and that's really bringing that area of contrast alive. I want to work on her hair, and I have to decide whether I'm going to work on the shadow of the large area or the shadows within the shadows, those little states, so to speak, within the entire nation area. And when I look at it, I do see some opportunities for darkening the entire area, but I'm starting to lose a little of the definition in these spots, and I want to refine that. So I think I'm going to work on a smaller scale and just work on these little pockets, these little shadows within the entire shadow shape here. So let's do that. So I'm just going to get a smaller brush, probably a 1/2 inch flat, and I'm just going to fill in some of these shadows and get them a little more precise in terms of shape and value all throughout her hair. Take that 1/2 inch flat. We're going to pull from this mixture we had before. Ultramarine blue, raw umber dark, a little bit of alizarin crimson. Put a little fresh matte medium on it, liven that up. Sometimes you can do that if your paint's getting a little tacky. Just squirt it right on the mixing area. And you also want to spray it a little bit as well. And I want something that's fairly dark at this point, fairly opaque. And let's start with this area right here. I'm going to show you on the white card. It's going to look like this. It's fairly opaque at this point. But let's start in this dark area here. I want to find a dark shadow in her hair and work out from that. And this spot right here is pretty dark. And I'm going to just smooth this out using short choppy strokes. There's a little shadow down here I want to capture. Don't be afraid to zoom in on your reference photo to really see the detail. There's looks like two little divots of hair, little locks of hair flowing up inside this larger space. All right, and we're just going to fill in this whole thing. And then we're going to darken along the edges of her ear. And so I've created a little pocket of area where this part is lighter, dramatically lighter, and I think I'm going to just leave it be for now. I'll come back in and add the nuances in another layer. With this technique, you do have to be a little patient, and you know, you're going to want to do everything within 1 or 2 layers, but it takes a few layers, and if you don't get the look you want within the first, second, third, or fourth layer, well, there's always going to be another layer you can do to get it. So I'm just setting myself up for success, and I know that I'll have an opportunity to address that later. Let's fill in a little of these spots up here on the top. This shadow here should be a little darker, and I'm also trying to refine the shape as well. I think I'm going to switch to my round brush at this point. Just need something with a little more precision right now. And I want to just block in some really distinct value shapes on the top here. And this is where we're really kind of refining some of the shadows we had from before in previous layers. Adding a little divot in here. This can go down, get a shadow going here to separate these two little locks. And we can start using some short choppy strokes as well to kind of get the texture implied. But that's going to probably have to come more towards the end of the painting. Okay. And we're just going to darken this area in here a little bit. We'll darken this whole shadow in here as well. Yeah, this whole section needs to get substantially darker, and I'm trying to bring this up just to the edge and build a little bit of texture by creating some divots in the brush strokes. Here it gets a little bit darker. Right here it's darker. Under here it's darker. So I'm just looking for those opportunities to darken certain spots. Right here it should get darker. In here as well. This whole section can get a bit darker in a few spots. It's kind of a big lock of hair that's coming out right there. I'll move back to this area and just define a couple of spots. All right, I'm going to move over here to this right hand side. I'm going to just fill in a couple of spots. Darken this area right above her forehead. There's a little area here I can darken. I'm going to just miss a few spots and kind of create a little bit of an almost stippled texture. As I bring this down, and we go into this section here. A little bit of a shadow in this spot, we can apply that. And a little bit of a shadow right here, we can apply that too. And I'm going to darken this spot on this side just a bit as well. There we are. That's looking good. Bring this shadow all the way down to the side. I'm going to refine this shadow right here alongside of her face. And then we have the opportunity to get just a couple little shapes going up inside here. It's almost a little triangular shape there. Darken this section just a bit up here. Just building upon previous layers. So as long as you had some previous layers that had some of this texture on here, you'll find it pretty easy to do. If not, you might have to go just a bit more opaque with your glaze here. But or you can just add more layers down the road. Add just a few little textural divots here on these braids. And let's define the outer edge of her hair right now. Take this opportunity to do that. So it looks like it kind of comes out a little bit at a few sharp angles. And then we have a nice divot up here that's substantially darker than the rest. I want to capture that. All right. It's looking good. Excellent. I'm just going to refine the bottom edges here of these little braids in the back using a very light touch. And I want to define also this edge here along her jawline just a bit. I want to define these outer braids a little bit again. That's good. All right, that's good. Let's do another glaze on the shadowed area of her face, and that'll wrap it up for this lesson. I'm going to take some of the same coloring that I use for her hair, but just add a little bit of burnt sienna to it. All right, so we're just warming that glaze up a little bit with some burnt sienna. Show you what that looks like on the white card. It's just kind of a nice rich brown, but it's still pretty dark in tone. And we're going to just start with the top because that's the darkest area. We want to work out from that. And I tell you what, you might want to just thin that out a little bit. That's a little too strong. Let's add some matte medium to it, and we'll thin it out, make it a little bit safer to apply. All right, now we're looking at something lighter. I'll just show you on that white card again. You can see the difference here. between the two. This was the first one. Here's the second one with more matte medium. And we'll just give this a shot, see how that looks. That's better. Yeah, we don't want to go too dark or you could end up getting a lot of blotchiness. We just want to darken the whole thing a little bit. And we're just going to go over this left-hand side, part way up to the eye socket area. I'm going to keep it on the interior here, so we want to leave some room to get some warmer glazes. So let's just bring this not all the way to the edge of that shadow, just part way. And I'm going to go onto the chin a little bit, onto the left side of her lips. And we're going to go under her chin on her neck. About that far. And a little bit on the shadowed area right here. All right. And I think that'll be good. Yeah, that adds a little more contrast overall, but let's just add a bit of an interior shadow to the nose area. And a little bit under the nose as well. Just go over a little bit of the wing of the nose, a tiny bit on the ball end of the nose, just getting a little bit of a shadow right here. And we'll add just a bit more burnt sienna to this glaze, warm it up. And I'm going to come down from her hair a little bit, add a tiny bit of a shadow there. Just using 45-degree angle strokes. I'll soften up the edge, just running my finger along a bit. Work into the side of the face. There. Add a little bit of shading right there. That's good. Just a little bit along the edge of the jawline, tiny bit. Yeah, that kind of livens it up a little bit. That's good. All right, and here's where we're going to end up for this particular lesson. I think we're at a good stopping point. We've developed some shading on the face, the hair especially, a little bit in the background, another layer on her clothing. And so things are really taking shape here, and the painting is starting to look more and more finished. Now there's a lot of work yet to be done for sure, and I plan on sharing that in the next 2 lessons for you. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video. If you need some help, reach out to me. You can get a hold of me with the comments below this video, email, and of course within the school if you're an All Access member. Also, our Facebook group is a great place to get some support and encouragement. But yeah, if you need help, don't feel like there's nobody here on your side. We'll be happy to help you out, give you some tips, give you some encouragement to keep you going in this challenge so you can finish this portrait well. And at the end of the day, you'll have a painting you can be proud of, and you can replicate the process again and again and keep doing portraits that are at the best of your ability, that you can possibly sell, you can use to encourage others in your friends and family nexus of influence, maybe even do commission portraits wherever the Lord would lead. But again, thank you so much for watching this video. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, check out Realistic Acrylic Portrait School for more tutorials that are helpful, and of course sign up for the challenge to get the welcome kit with the reference photo, the portrait layout guide, everything you need to be able to paint this portrait along with us. And I look forward to teaching you in the next lesson. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.